Welcome to Point Blank, brought to you by Fitz Roofing. I'm Brandon Stranger, Sports Map Houston. I'm joined by Joel Blank of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. If you haven't yet, please hit subscribe. Really do appreciate it. Joel, let's take a walk down memory lane for a second. In 2018, the Rockets had on their team James Harden, Chris Paul, Clint Capella. All three of those guys on playoff teams right now, while the Rockets watch from home, unfortunately. After that 2018 season, the Rockets traded away Chris Paul. He was older, ailing, and had what some consider to be an untradeable contract. So they traded for Russell Westbrook, an even worse contract, and then flipped him for John Wall, an even worse contract. This year, Chris Paul has led his team to the second seed in the West. They've beaten LeBron in Game 1 of the playoffs. He was also an all-star, and he has just one more year left on that deal. The Rockets have 2 more years on Wall's current deal, which includes a trade kicker. He's hurt, and he seems to be making passive overtures on social media that he wants out of Houston. Is it fair to say, with the benefit of hindsight, that the Rockets traded the wrong superstar following the 2019 season?
Well, that's a tough one, Brandon. I think that if you just want to say, should the Rockets have given in to James Harden's demands and traded Chris Paul, I think the answer is still no. And if you believe what came out of Daryl Morey's mouth instead of what he worked to make happen behind the scenes, then he wasn't going to trade Chris Paul, and I think that they could have worked it out and everything could have been fine. But I think the entire organization fell victim to doing anything and everything that James Harden said. And that was never good because, as you say, if you look back in hindsight now and say, was James Harden right or wrong? Almost every time, unequivocally, he was wrong. And now the franchise is left to pick up the pieces because when he realized this time there was no solution and easy way out, he got out. And that's the biggest problem.
There's some more fallout to that, and I want to get into that. Before we do, give us a word from Fitz Roofing.
We love Fitz Roofing. They're dedicated to the people of Houston and surrounding areas, and they take care of you in so many different ways. From full roofing for your business or your home, to yard fence replacement, to home repairs around your attic and your house. They do it all, and the best part is they do it starting with a free no-obligation estimate. All you got to do is call them, 832-521-3001. They come to you and tell you what they can do. It's Fitz Roofing, making a difference, one home at a time.
Joel, the Rockets sent a first-rounder as part of the deal to acquire Chris Paul, and then they sent 2 first and 2 first-round pick swaps to OKC along with Paul. Then OKC flipped Paul for another first-round pick in that Phoenix deal. So, in summary, Houston sent 5 first-rounders out as part of the CB3 experience. OKC received 5 first-round picks in total as part of the Chris Paul experience. So this begs the question, Daryl Morey is not a dumb GM. We know that. But through this scope, these deals look pretty egregious. Is it fair to say that Daryl Morey's kryptonite turned out to be his loyalty to James Harden?
Oh, absolutely. I think that in part, I think that's absolutely a great call. I think that Daryl was a victim of his own moves. Daryl was enamored with the fact that the first superstar, the first guy that really put the Rockets back on the map was his ability to be at the right place at the right time, leaving the right voicemail to Sam Presti when James Harden said he wanted a max deal and Oklahoma City couldn't afford it, and decided, hey, we got to move him, and he went to Houston. And Daryl had something fall into his lap that changed forever the franchise history and his career. In doing so, you're right. He was then at the mercy of number 13 to follow his lead and do everything that he wanted, because if he was disgruntled and he wanted out and he wasn't happy, that would be a bad look for Daryl and it would be disaster for the franchise. But just like you said when we were starting this piece, the fact of the matter is this team would be far better with Russell Westbrook than it was with John Wall, even in just season 1, simply because of the fact that everybody you talked to across the league said Russell Westbrook is the greatest teammate they've ever played with. He's a locker room guy. You have a young, impressionable roster, and Russ would have been perfect for this team. Also, Russell Westbrook, not only does he fill up a stat sheet, but he also, because of the assists, likes to distribute the basketball. John Wall this year constantly looked away from Christian Wood when he was open, constantly looked away from the young players that were open so he could get his own points and make sure his own stats were good. And then John Wall, much like we've seen with James Harden, at the end of the season, as you indicated in the open, starts indicating and hinting that he might be better suited somewhere else and that there should be a buyout or some some way, a release, so he can get out of his contract. Well, John, here's the thing. If you want to give up at least half of that $40 million a year for the next 2 years, they might consider it. Otherwise, there's no way you're going to get out of it for peanuts so you can get another deal and a chance to win somewhere else.
Just quickly before we wrap this up, Joel, is there something to be learned here, or do superstars in the NBA just wield so much leverage that it's almost impossible to come out of these things clean?
You know what, Brandon? It's all across sports now, and it's the Deshaun Watson effect. It used to be that if you have a long-term contract at a guaranteed amount of money, that your hands were tied, and that's where you were going to be unless the franchise decided to try and move you. But now, because of the Deshaun Watson situation, you've seen Russell Wilson, you've seen Aaron Rodgers, you've seen Julio Jones, you've seen other players in other sports as well say, hey, if they're not going to do this or they're not going to do that, then I want out. Otherwise, I'm not going to play. And all of a sudden, the players have all the leverage. So I think that we're past the days where the strength in a negotiation, the strength in a deal being done was with the team. It's now fully in the laps of the players, and they feel like they're invincible. Even if they feel like it's an ironclad contract for money and years that they can't get out of, they now feel like they can. And they feel like if they press the issue enough, there's going to be a way to find them the different team with a better chance to win. And in terms of Daryl Morey, it's the same thing. You also have to be leery of the fact that a general manager like a Bill O'Brien or a Daryl Morey is only worried about themselves. And if it's the last year or the last couple of years of their contract and they know they're under fire, they don't care about your future. They don't care about how many assets they trade away. They don't care about what the cost is in the long term, as long as in the short term, it gives them a chance to save their job. And that's the evolution of sports these days in where we are as opposed to where we've been.